Hello, my name is Arthur, and in the last video we made an animated tank tread for a 3D Godot project. Now, since then, I've cleaned up my project. I've taken away all of the test files, only leaving the script, which I renamed tread. So it's sitting there, it's not attached to anything anymore. We still have the link scene. It's time to look at this beginning scene, this place that we're starting this project from. So, first problem, the mesh instance comes in named cylinder. So that's a problem coming out of Blender. Of course, we can just rename it here, but we're going to look at what's coming out of Blender. So when we select that mesh and we look at the transform dialog, what we're going to see is we're carrying a rotation and we're carrying a scale. This is a scene, like I've rebuilt the scene for this link, taking away any of the edits I did experimenting, and this is sort of what we end up with. So let's say we undo these things that were never actually done in Godot. This is what we're left with for our link. And these problems, they came straight out of Blender. So let's have a look at Blender at where maybe the problem is. Now we have a scale here and we have an X rotation of 90. So these are values that came out of Blender. Now, speaking of scale, we need to consider the scale that things are at here to be able to make our tank tread into what we want it to be. Now, if we're to undo those two steps that we just took and look at this from a side view, and then look at our Blender project, we would see that what we get in Godot is not the same as what left Blender. It's facing in the opposite direction. So yeah, when it comes to orientation in Godot and Blender, that's a little confusing and I'm not exactly clear on it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to rotate this by 180 degrees from a top view. That way the bottom stays the bottom. And it's going to turn it around the other direction. Now we have two rotation values. Then I'm going to scale it, and I'm going to pay attention to the size. Z of 1.5 meters. Well, even why that is qualifying as Z is questionable. It's an issue why Z is 155 meters. And the reason why is the dimension is local. So Z, which is currently traveling along the y-axis, which is part of the rotation problem. You rotate on 90 degrees on X, and Z will be going up the y-axis. So this value is saying how wide the tank tread is. Now, I don't know. I'm thinking that 1.5 meters for a tank tread, that's a little bit excessive. So, yeah, I would say maybe 0.5 meter or 60 centimeters kind of range. Or even smaller. If we were doing something like a toy tank game, then we would be going much smaller than that. So let's scale that down until Z is looking a little more realistic. So let's bring that right down. And let's go right down to 0.5. So that's going to get a little finicky as we get closer. Okay, it wants to bounce in and out of 5, so we're just going to engage where it is and then bring our cursor back from the origin, because that will make it scale less finicky. And we should be able to get that right on to 0.5 meters. So with that done and the piece rotated, now is the time to apply the transforms. So we'll apply all transforms. Now we have no rotation, no scale, and the 1/2 meter is sitting on Y where it belongs. So beyond that, the orientation, it becomes a little unclear. So I'm not entirely clear on the orientation, because up and down in Godot is different than up and down in Blender. So that gets into a little bit confusing. Let's save the file. Then we're going to re-export. We'll overwrite this file. So that's exported. In Godot, that's likely to generate some errors, and these errors can just be ignored. We can just clear those out of there. So we'll close this up. We won't save any. We'll open this up. We'll look at it. Now we have the same thing where it's facing in the other direction. So we're going to consider that in Godot. When the tank is moving forward, this is the direction that we would want it to be pointing after it is placed onto the curve. So in Blender, we're going to want the front of our tank on the back of our other piece. So we're going to put the front of our tank over here and the back of our tank over here. So in Godot, let's just do that one more time. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to call this tread. Link. So that's a tread link. So let's export it again. Let's give it its name and export the name properly. Then Control S, that will save the file. Now we're going to take and we're going to branch the file. So we're going to go Save As. And we'll call this one Tank. So now we have a branch of that in Godot. It doesn't matter if we reload. That'll be fine. We'll delete the animation player. Things look the way they're supposed to, so we can now save this and we'll overwrite the old one. So that will clean things up. This is just has something to do with it getting a little wonky when we overwrite an import. So I don't know exactly why that happens, but it seems to happen whenever I overwrite an import. So now we're going to model up a tank body and try to do something fast, so that we're not going to make a Abrams tank here. We're just going to make something quick. We'll get that dialog out of the way for now. And we're going to add a modifier. And this has been saved as a branch, so that's a kind of a safety precaution. If we save it as a branch, it's really very easy in Godot or in Blender to accidentally press Control S instead of Shift S or Shift A. Like, it happens quite easily that such keyboard accidents happen. So we're going to implement an array, and what we're going to use the array for is just to get a scope for the length of the tank. So we know that the small tread that was made was around 25. So that would be about 12 long. But that's a very small tread for a tank. So let's bring that up some. Let's go right up to 20. So we'll bring that up to 20. And because this is now just a measuring and modeling aid and will be deleted, whoops, we'll move it and center it somewhat. See if we can get that centered. So that's more or less centered. We want this to be the front and this to be the back of our tank. And this can be our measurement. So we'll shift A, we'll add a cube. We'll pull the cube up a little bit because where the origin is on this body is going to determine its center of gravity. So we're going to put the center of gravity, approximately where the top of the tank tread would be. And just roughly. So we can tab into edit mode. We'll scale this. Somewhere around there, scale it on X to bring it out. And we'll a little bit further than the tank tread. From the top view, we'll scale it along Y. And we'll scale it a little bit more along Y. But we want to leave some extra for the housings for the tank treads. So we'll extrude those out still. Now we'll go over to loop cuts and we'll loop cut 2 cuts at a time. Each time we do it, we're going to scale X and just pull them out. And this is just going to give us some vertices to put some roundness around the tank treads. So we can loop cut, scale X. A loop cut, scale X. Loop cut and scale X. And really, that should be enough. Like, we don't need to do a lot here. I'm not going to make a very serious model out of this. So we'll go into X-ray with vertices mode on. We'll select all. And we can pull that up some. Sort of just eyeballing out what we imagine the tread will be like. Then we can box select along here and just start pulling some shape into that. We can also just work from circle deselect at this point. Whoops. Little mouse click error. And just come up with something that looks like would be around the treads of a tank. And we'll do one more here. Grab that down a bit. Okay, so from here, I don't know, I think it's pretty reasonable to just delete the top. So X will delete those vertices. We'll select all of this, extrude upwards. Like that. Then we can extrude upwards again. Something like that. We'll put in a little difference to make this into the front. So maybe give it this different kind of edge on the front that looks more like, whoops, I got a box select to get both vertices. So something that makes it look like it's supposed to go over obstacles, whereas the back can be left flat and make a clear distinction between the front and the back. And some modeling can be done up here or not. We could go into edges and put on a bevel if we were inclined to do something like that. So we would just come across like so, and then come across like so, deselecting. And from a top view, circle deselect this. And that would leave us an edge that we could bevel if we felt that's what we wanted to do, just to give a little bit more here. And that's okay like that. Check that it's not creating anything weird. Then from a side view, we can deselect. Let's get the move tool up. Circle select. We want to deselect all first though. Then we can do something like this. So we'll circle select and just get this edge here. Come over here. Just kind of making it up as I go. Well, that looks good. So we'll extrude scale Y. We can scale that out and give it more the shape of a tank. And that's not so bad. So we could call that a tank shape. That's fairly reasonable. Yeah, that looks pretty reasonable. So now we'll shift A and we'll add a cylinder. F9. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees on X. Cut back these vertices like we did with the previous cylinder, and let's bring down the size until it looks like something. So let's go 1/2 meter. We'll give it a 1/2 meter wheel. We'll bring these up a little bit. Place it so that it has some space for the tread to go through, but if the tread goes through the tank body a little bit, it's not going to matter. It'll be just fine. It'll still look good. So we can take that. Now on the X here, we can delete the minus after we've duplicated this one, and that will just pop it to the other end. So that looks good. If we look at that from a side view, we'll see what we have is maybe not what we were thinking we'd have. Now, there's two different ways to go about this. I'm going to simply scale it down. I'm not going to put an axle, and I'm just going to put the 2 tracks. And they're just kind of just mysteriously going to be there. But I won't put an axle or anything in the middle. That may come in handy later, I'm not sure. So we want to select all of this. So we'll just select the bottom and use Control plus to get it all selected. Scale Y. Bring it down to be a little bit smaller than the tracks so that they have overhang. Then we can grab these 2. Decide where we want to put them. Do we want to inset them? Do we want to outset them a bit? I'm going to inset it, I think. No, I'm going to bring it right out. That way we get to see the tracks moving. And I don't know, we might want to scale this in a little bit here. So L, scale, Y, just to slim that in just a little bit. And the same thing there, I just grab a section of it and use Control plus. So shift duplicate that. This time we're on the y-axis, so we can just get rid of the negative there, and that'll pop it over to the other side, and we can look at it from this view. Okay, at this point, let's give a name, tank. The tank tread is no longer needed, and this is a branch file, so we have the tank tread saved in a different working file. We'll go to vertices, and we'll box select this half of all of those cylinders. We'll delete the vertices. We'll circle select over here, extrude, scale X0, just enter 0 in the text field up here. That will pull it to the middle. Circle select this one, extrude, doesn't matter where, scale X0, we'll enter 0 in the text field up here, and then we'll just select all of these, merge by distance. That removes those vertices. In the middle here, there's going to be some uncomfortable faces we need to get rid of. They're already selected, so we can X, delete faces. That will make things work better for the next part. Now let's turn off X-ray, circle, select this, press 9, circle, select this, and select this. We'll want to check and see our selection has not gone anywhere but on these faces. We'll extrude because it will work the best. So we'll extrude, drop it, scale it. But first we need individual origins. That way they'll scale individually and they won't pull in towards each other. So on this one we're actually scaling only on 2 axes, so we don't have to limit it. This time we'll limit it to Z to even that out, so that there's an evenish, more even thickness going around. We'll have a look at that from a side, extrude it, scale, Y. Only problem there is we need to press period and go back to median point. That probably will still have the extrusion there, so we'll just push that in, and we'll give some materials to this. But before that, let's inset this one. We'll pull it up a little bit, and we'll pull that towards the back a little bit, just for somewhere for the turret to sit on top of. So let's go into material view, see what we have for materials in here. So we have the black and the white material. We're not going to need the white material, so let's go. I don't know if we can get rid of it that way. We'll just leave it be. Well, actually, we'll change the white material into a green material. I don't like to go too dark. It seems to me if that colors come across much darker in Godot than in Blender. Kind of looks like there's something strange there, but we'll just ignore that. Oh, I see what it is. It's just the other side. So we'll select linked on this one and on this one. Add a material. We'll give it the black material, except we don't want it to be the same color as the tread, so we're going to lighten it up a bunch. We have to assign that one. Okay, let's go tab into object mode. Let's look at what's going on here. So nothing looks abnormal here. Except maybe Z. But that we're going to ignore because that is the offset of the origin, which we want that offset. So we're going to call that good, and we have a name, so we can file, export, Collada. We'll go into our imports, we'll call it tank, export, and that will now be in Godot. So that's it for this video. In the next video, we'll come back and we'll re-import this tank body and see what we can do to get it moving. So that'll be in the next video, and until then, take care.